And we're live. Okay. Lindsey, Acton, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's nice to see you today.
Yeah. It's okay. We probably are live. It takes a minute to get to the real stream. Yeah.
Okay.
So a little producer glitch there.
That's all right.
Our
first timer.
Yeah. So you wrote a new book, Throwing Rocks.
I did.
We're here to discuss it. So you had a lifelong dream to be an author. Tell us about that dream.
Oh gosh. So that started when I was little. I have always been a reader. You know, reading's been sort of my safe place, my peace, my whole life. Books have been some of my best friends in my life. And when I was in third grade, I had a teacher. Her name was Mrs. Fitzgerald. And I had the extreme honor of actually teaching her own child when I was, fourth or fifth year teacher.
Yeah.
But I taught her kid. And but anyway, when I was in third grade, we wrote these stories in class. And I think it was about an Easter egg or something silly. But I wrote it and I gave it to her, turned it in to read, and she said, you know, I really think you could be an author someday. And I was in third grade. I was 9 years old.
Wow.
And I thought, well, maybe I could. And I think that was maybe a real testament to what teachers can say to people that impact them for their entire lives.
Yeah.
Because here I am, rounding the corner to 40, and this is what's happening. But I always liked to write. I always expressed myself best through words. I'm not a great talker. This is hard for me, but we're doing it. So
right.
We're doing hard things because we can. But I think I always just thought writing was something I liked to do. Books were the places I felt most comfortable, and I never really let that go away. I just never really had the guts to pursue it. And now here we are. So
yeah,
that's kind of how that happened.
And it led you into a career in teaching,
Yeah.
which led to the book, which is largely about teacher trauma.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I imagine you never felt you'd have to write a book about such a topic.
No, definitely not. I kept saying to my husband, I don't know what story to tell. You know, he'd say, well, when are you going to write your book? You know, because I would always come up with these ideas of things to do or, you know, different ways to express myself or whatever. And he'd say, well, when are you going to write your book? And that's sort of his stock response to just about anything would be, when you write your book. And he probably said that to me 800 times. And but no, this was not the story I thought I was going to be telling. I don't know what the story was.
Yeah.
But it wasn't this one. But this one came to me in 2007 and lived with me for a long, long time before it lived on the pages of the book. But I'm glad that it's there now. But it was a really interesting set of circumstances that was probably one of the most transformative experiences of my adult life.
Sure.
But definitely, you know, kept me in teaching, but almost kept me out of teaching. And how that happened simultaneously is very paradoxical, and I understand that. But
yeah.
But it's real interesting to kind of put it down and go, yeah, this happened to me, and people need to know about it. So.
Yeah. Your publisher, Tom Brew, he mentions in the beginning of the book how this is a story he felt really needed to be told. Mm-hmm. And I think I would agree that both teachers and non-teachers, like just, I don't know what to call it, the general public, us in the private sector, we need to know about this too, right? Because for all of us that have kids that go to school every day, or maybe this year they attend school a different way, but they're still we're still dependent upon all these teachers, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of teachers that are teaching our youth. And this is something that you experience, but many teachers have probably experienced situations like this, right?
Yeah, I think I used to joke. I used to say that to people, like, I go home to a house and a family and I mop floors and clean toilets and, do all these things that probably not as often as I should, but we do them. And so I think people forget that teachers sort of put on a 7-hour show every day. You know, you stand up and you're okay for 7 hours because you have to be okay for 7 hours or 8 or whatever it is. And all the while, just like every other human being on earth, we're processing and dealing and coping with some of our own things. And some of those own things come from what happens within our classroom walls, within our school walls. Our students come to us with their own traumas. They come to us with their own sad experiences, happy experiences. And because we love them and because we build relationships with them and get to know them over time, we carry those things with us as well. So very frequently we're carrying our own traumas, our own heartaches outside of school, theirs from outside of school. And then sometimes there's things that happen inside of school, you know, and I think here we are in the middle of this pandemic where everyone's experiencing some upheaval, and that's not, you know, we're not exempt from that. So it's important for us to talk about.
Yeah, I agree. And so let's get into it a little bit. The book starts with your first year as a teacher, and what you thought was going to be this other lifelong dream, or I don't know how long you had the dream, but a dream of being a teacher. And you were going to take some time off from pursuing that career, but it kind of just fell into your lap a little bit, and you ended up teaching school at your former alma mater, and you had what maybe the most difficult year you've ever had as a teacher.
Oh man.
And a particular student who seemed to maybe kind of imprint on you a little bit. And
I like that word. I've not thought of that before.
Yeah, that's one of the questions one of the notes I kind of wrote is, did you think, so we'll try not to give everything away to the potential readers of the book, but did you think that maybe Kevin in the book, that he was also having the same kind of difficulties with student life, and maybe he imprinted on you because you described some situations where you had some trouble with faculty, with parents that were having trouble with you in the pool, in an incident where you were taking swimming laps before school started. So maybe he saw that you were having that kind of trouble, and that's maybe one of the reasons he imprinted on you. But that's what unfolded, you know, in this situation your first year. Yeah,
you know, Kevin was a real interesting kid. And at the time, I had no idea what was happening. You know, I didn't understand. I didn't understand really what he was doing. I didn't understand why he was doing it. And I don't know that I still completely do.
Yeah.
This has been, you know, it'll be 14 years ago this coming April. And 14 years later, I still have so many questions.
Sure.
I have a lot more answers than I did, which allows me to cope a whole lot better with my life and, you know, being in the classroom still. But, you know, he was just such an interesting kid. And when you're 23 and you're struggling and life is really overwhelming, you know, I remember looking around my classroom for the adult. And the adult was me.
Oh, crap, yeah.
Yeah, that was very frightening. And I remember having that same feeling when my son was born, like, who's in charge here? And it was me. And it's real sobering, you know, when you have those thoughts and you have to kind of figure this stuff out for yourself.
No one hands you that authority. It's just...
Yeah, or like a book.
Yeah.
Like, here's how you do this. No, there's no book. And in teacher school, they give you all this theory, right? All these grandiose, like, this is going to be the most amazing thing ever with the most eager group of learners you're ever going to encounter in your life, and it's going to be magical. And then it's just not magical at all. And when you're 23 and you have 18-year-old students in your room, they don't look at you like the adult, and they don't care what you say necessarily in terms of, like, sit down and be quiet, or, hey, I need you to pay attention, or, you know, those things don't register, right? They just see someone who kind of looks like them. And And so Kevin, he didn't say a lot for a long time, but he would sit in my room and he would watch, and he was very intent. He was very observant, and he would just watch. And I would, back before COVID, I could walk around my classroom, and I would do that. And he would watch me walk, and he would follow me with his eyes. And then one day I remember I was at my desk and I had my head in my hands, and it had just been like the culmination of a lot of things, personally and professionally, going on at the same time. And it was weird because I like looked up and there he was, and I was like a little startled, and he said, "It's okay." And it was like the roles sort of got flipped for a minute.
Yeah.
And he said, "It's going to be okay." Or something to that effect. And I was like, okay. And then that was sort of the beginning of us talking to each other, you know, and I think they don't tell you in teacher school, like, here's what you do if you have the situation that I had. There's no playbook for that. And unfortunately, I've lost so many students over my career that somewhat desensitized me to some of those things. And I don't know if that's good or bad. I really don't. But I think Kevin was a really interesting kid. I think he really was struggling too. And common struggle sometimes meets, right? And that's how even if you've made a friend because you both don't like the same person, right? That's a common struggle too. It's not very nice, but it's a common struggle.
Right.
And so, I think that's kind of how it started. And then it got increasingly strange, over time, but at least it didn't start strange. It really didn't start strange. It was just this kid in my room watching me teach.
Yeah, and he could see you were having a bad day, and he said, "Hey, it's okay," and tried to comfort you in some way. So it seems, and you talk about teacher school a lot in the book, and that was going to be one of my questions. One of my notes is, had they covered anything related to potential trauma with students or anything of the sort? So nothing.
No, it was all like the fancy word is pedagogy, right? So your methodology of teaching, and like how you do it, and it was all pedagogical, and it was all like lesson planning and objectives and grouping and how to do all these things, but nothing like, here's how an angry parent should be handled.
Wow.
Here and man, parents get really angry sometimes.
Sure.
And I used to get so offended by that. And now I just let them talk. And then I say, how can I help?
Yeah.
Because the truth is, when people are angry, most of the time they just want to be heard.
Right.
So, okay, let's talk about that. Let's figure this out. But at 23, when I had someone's dad hollering at me on the phone about using the pool for 45 minutes before school, I didn't have any clue how to handle that. 37-year-old me would handle that in a completely different manner than 23-year-old me handled it. And I think that's kind of the essence, some part of the essence of what we're getting at in the book too, is how can we support people who are beginning little teachers, babies, in the things that are actually things they're going to face. You can write all the lesson plans you want, but how can we like hold people up when they're so exhausted they can't think straight or see straight? And we have a brand new teacher in our department this year, and she is amazing. She's going to be an incredible teacher. I'm not going to say her name because, but she's incredible. Sure. And she's also 22 years old teaching juniors. And I feel her. And I just want to hug her. And I can't because COVID. But I really just want to hug her because there are so many things that she's facing and she's having thrown at her that I'm 100% sure no one taught her how to cope with.
Really?
I'm 100% sure.
Still today, they're not, even with as much as we've gotten used to school shootings and things like that, like they're still not preparing teachers that way, you think?
I think as far as school violence goes, they're doing an incredibly better job.
Okay.
But as far as like how to answer someone's mom when they're really mad, or how to, discipline and things. Discipline is hard, discipline is hard, and you have to finesse and develop that over time. And I'm not sure how you teach that.
Yeah.
But man, school safety has come such a long way in 15 years. Like, when I was in danger, the day that I was in danger, it never even occurred to me not to go to school. Like, I just got in the car that Friday morning and I went to work and I carried on about my day.
Yeah.
And now they would say, you need to go home and don't come back until we are sure that this is okay. But it never even occurred to me. And I don't think it occurred to my administration. And that's because 14 years ago, life was real different.
Right.
And training was real different. And so they did the best they could with what they had. And, they took care of me the only way they knew how. And they took care of my best friend who was in danger as well, the only way they knew how, the best way they knew how. But, yeah, it's come a long way. We practice drills, and our kids know what to do. And it's a double-edged sword. You're a parent, so your 6-year-old practices lockdown drills.
Sure, yeah.
And that's awful.
That's awful, right. But they're preparing teachers for those potential incidents with ways to be as safe as possible in the classroom. But are they preparing teachers for the trauma that might come after it?
No.
Even for events that are just almost unfolding, like what you went through. You went through a situation where you had an increased police presence in the school. They thought something might happen. But it didn't necessarily happen, at least not that day,
right?
And not in the school, and but those events are traumatic in a way. So, do they prepare teachers any better now for how to handle that situation once you leave the classroom?
I don't think they do. I think what unfolded with Kevin unfolded, and that unfolded on a Friday night, and I was back in class on Monday morning. And I've been back in class every day since then. Yeah. It was my responsibility to seek what I needed. But I didn't know I needed anything. And I think sometimes we have these things that happen to us, and we don't realize their sort of long-term effects, right? So we have these things that happen, and I just went to school. Yeah. I went to prom. I went to prom the day that the very next day. Yeah. And I just carried on with myself. And I think that that's probably okay. I don't think there was anything wrong with that. What I struggle with is that, like, mental health wise, right, there is no one, and guidance counselors are for kids. They're not for teachers. And we have some like employee assistance things and stuff like that where I currently teach. And I think that's great. But I don't know that there's anyone who's really going, hey, how are you? Right? Like, are you okay? Yeah. And a lot of times the answer is no. I had a real interesting interaction with a colleague, 2 weeks ago. I was in the copy room during my prep period, getting ready for class, and she came in and we were just kind of catching up. She's a friend, she's great. But she has had unbelievable trauma in her life, not from school, just unbelievable trauma in her life. She lost her husband to suicide. Lots of things. But she said, I was talking to another teacher, and she was saying that all these things are happening with COVID over and over and over again, like this change and that change and this change and that change, and it just keeps coming. And I looked at her and smiled, and I said, that's called compounding trauma. And it's a thing that people don't talk about. And it's a real thing. And she said, oh, it has a name? Yeah, it has a name. Yeah. It's called compounding trauma, and it's real hard to heal from. And so, is there a mental health component in place for teachers? No. And should there be? Yes. Teachers, we're going to lose people out of this profession and it's never because of kids, and it's hardly ever, economic, even though, people are always like, teachers aren't paid enough. We're not, but that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah.
And it's never been why I've ever considered leaving teaching.
Yeah.
It's more about, am I okay?
Yeah.
Right? Am I able to shoulder all the things that I'm shouldering on a daily basis, year after year after year after year? And it's really, it's hard for me to, sometimes it's really hard for me to keep doing that. And I know I'm not by myself. I know I'm not the only one, to ever say, this is too heavy. Carrying this is too heavy. So no, I mean, that's a long answer to a short question.
No, and what I was thinking is that, to maybe put it in a little bit of perspective for folks, is the average household is what, 2 kids. Mm-hmm. So imagine all the pain and the trauma that comes with caring for 2 kids, and all the things you want and hope for those kids, and you want them to be safe, and you fear for their safety and their well-being every day. Mm-hmm. Especially when you're sending them off to school, or you're, for the first time sending them to a preschool or a daycare. But a teacher, how many kids on average in a day or in a given year, how many kids are under your care as a teacher?
Somewhere between 150 and 200.
Okay.
So right now, when everybody's not quarantined,
yeah,
I have 165. And some of those kids will change at the semester, so I'll get new ones that I didn't have last semester. So I'd say safe number would be 175.
There you go.
Would be in my...
And you're caring for those kids, mm-hmm. Maybe not at a deep level as the parents are,
right.
but still at a much deeper level than maybe most people can think mm-hmm. about or would say if they were asked.
Yeah.
Right. And then there's all the things that happen to those kids and their struggles on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, you had a number of students you've lost over 14 years, and yep. probably so many other teachers. At some point, it's a numbers game, I would assume, right?
Yeah.
That many years teaching, you're going to see so many kids lost through.
Yeah. Nobody ever said to me, hey, by the way, they might die.
Yeah. There you go.
No one ever said that to me. And I wish they had. Not that it would have changed what I'm doing, but it would have been like a real nice warning. Do
you think you would still have become a teacher if
do.
They had said that to you?
I do.
Really?
Yeah. But when you're young, you're just different.
Right.
I was just a different human than I am. Now, death was for old people.
Yeah.
Death was for grandmas and grandpas, and if they're 100 or,
right.
not if they're 17. When we lost Kevin, 3 months later, we lost another one. She was a colleague's daughter. That was unbelievable, unbelievably hard. It still is to think about.
I'm sure.
That. And it was, I taught at my first school for 7 years. I lost 6 during that time. And 2 of them were by suicide. And it's really difficult for me to think about that level of pain at that young age.
Yeah.
But then also to hug all these other people's babies and tell them it's going to be okay when they're searching for this answer that I don't have.
Yeah.
I can't tell you why your friend ended his life. I can't tell you that. I don't know the answer, and I don't know when this is going to stop hurting the way it's hurting you. I don't know when it's going to stop hurting me the way it's hurting me. But you give these pieces of yourself away, right? While you're comforting these kids, and it's really hard to get them back. It's really hard. And I think that that's something that maybe you underestimate when you go to school and you say, I want to be a teacher, right. and I'm going to just stand up and I'm going to talk about how much I love books. And so many days I don't say anything about books.
Yeah.
We talk about life and we talk about humanity, and books become real secondary real quick, but nobody said that to me. I don't know that anyone's saying it now. Wow. I hope they are.
And that's, I would say, probably one of the reasons you wrote the book, but mm-hmm. also one of the reasons you're talking about the book, right? You want to get this message out.
Yeah.
And in the book, you go on from this first year of teaching, mm-hmm. in the first few years, where not only did you experience the trauma in the classroom there with him, and obviously some other students, but also some trauma outside, because you're also a human being and you have
Yes.
parents and siblings and loved ones. There was some traumatic events there that built onto that compounding trauma. And then it's the journey to figure out that was still affecting you so many years later.
Yeah.
Right. And I think there's a quote in there where you talk about, it's almost like you address the stigma of therapy, but also then kind of address how it is a stigma immediately. You talk about running on the treadmill continuously, like you were running nowhere, and all that did was land you in a therapist's office. But then you say immediately, but that's right where you should have been, something like that, right? So tell us a little bit about that journey to Trish.
So my chocolate cake addiction started.
Yeah, German chocolate cake, right?
German chocolate cake.
Yep.
I have my dad to thank for that. He always wanted that for his birthday when we were growing up, but for whatever reason, it was maybe comforting.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I didn't realize at the time that pain manifested itself in certain ways, and it manifests itself differently for everyone, right?
Yeah.
So for me, it's chocolate cake and running. And so, which is a strange combination.
Was it literally chocolate cake all the time?
Yes.
Like, that's all you were eating?
And I would call my best friend and I would say, I'm about to make a chocolate cake. And she would like go back away from the oven. Like, you have made 3 chocolate cakes this week and maybe you have a problem. And I'd be like, no, it's just delicious. It's not really,
there's nothing wrong. Yeah.
Nothing to see here.
Yeah.
So then I'd eat the chocolate cake out of the pan with a fork, like a savage, like a total heathen. And, sorry, Mom. My mother taught me to use plates, and lots of other good things. But, I would eat the chocolate cake and then I would go downstairs to the gym at my apartment complex and I would get on the treadmill. And I would crank it up as fast as I could get it to go. And I would run as hard as I could for 60 minutes.
Wow.
And just run. And for that 60 minutes, my mind would stop racing. My mind would stop playing tricks on me. It would let me just release. I don't know. Exercise has always been a really big part of my life, but it's better when it's healthy. Yeah. It's better when you're fueling your body the way you should be fueling your body. And maybe not sprinting on a treadmill for, an hour, but really, like, when your mind is unhealthy, it races and it goes nowhere, and it is like a treadmill.
Yeah.
There's nothing more boring than running on a treadmill. I once ran 8 miles on a treadmill because I was training for a mini marathon and it was raining and I needed to do a long run. And it was the most awful thing. It was so awful.
Yeah.
But I did it to train, for this half marathon. But, thinking back, all the signs were there. I just didn't know what I was looking for. And I think the real telling moment, and I talk about this in one of the chapters, is how I got to Trish. Trish was my therapist and literally saved my life. And the eternal gratitude for her is just, I can't even express. But yeah, I was in bed one night and I was reading and I was sitting in bed looking at a book and I thought I was reading it and I kept turning pages and then I would realize, wait a minute, I didn't retain anything that I had read. And so...
And we just talked before this. I asked you how long it would take you to read a book of this size, and you said a few hours.
Yeah.
So flipping pages and not retaining it is something that's totally unlike you.
Yes. Very foreign. Very, very foreign. I'm a pretty quick reader. I'm a pretty good reader. I always tell people I have very few marketable skills, but reading and writing papers are 2 of them. So anyway, I just couldn't retain. And so I said something to a couple friends and they were like, maybe it's time to talk to someone. Yeah. And I was like, please. So a friend of mine who was a teaching colleague gave me Trish's information, like a card. And I called and I made an appointment and I took myself there. And I lived 45 minutes from her. And I got in the car and I drove myself all the way around 465 to get over to her office, and I sat in the office, and I'm like sitting in the chair, like, is this what the sick people do? Because that's what I thought.
The sick people.
Yeah, the
quote,
sick
unquote,
people,
yeah.
not me, the
Right.
sick people. Because why would I be a sick people?
Sure.
And that's just so not true.
Right.
But I got in her office. Well, here she came, and Trish was a presence. And we talk about her in the book too, but
Yeah.
she was this like 6-foot brunette, and she was everything, and she came in and she had me sit in, there was like a couch, and there was like a couch and 2 chairs across from each other in her office, and I would refuse to sit on the couch because that was too much like therapy, and I didn't need therapy.
Right.
And she'd say, so you are aware you're at therapy? And I would be like, you're at therapy. I'm not at therapy. So we finally kind of came to an understanding, and truly Trish, oh my gosh, she like played the game with me for a while.
Yeah.
She'd let me just kind of come in and chat and talk about like whatever and avoid the issue, and then we finally got into it, a couple sessions in, and she Jedi mind tricked me, man. I didn't know she was therapizing me. I don't know if that's a word. If it is, I just made it up. But I didn't really know she was going to do that. And then she did, and she thought it was so clever that I was a teacher. And she would laugh because she'd say, I see a lot of teachers. And I see all my teachers like in October and in like February. And she's like, I see them all the time, but all my teachers want to see me in October because November is awful. I will always tell people that November and February are the 2 hardest months of the school year, and they just are. And it's because we're gearing up toward a long break, and it's just the way the year sort of ebbs and flows. And so I'd call her in October, and she'd be like, I'll add you to the list. Okay. But yeah, we sat down and we started working through some real serious stuff. And I'm really glad that we did that, because I stopped eating chocolate cake for every meal.
She challenged you to eat what was it?
A cheeseburger.
Cheeseburger.
Ugh. I was so horrified by it, because something that my anxiety does to me is when I'm really, really anxious, I can't eat. I can eat chocolate cake, and that's it. I didn't really know that was a trauma response, but it is. And so my trauma response is that I can eat nothing but chocolate cake, and that I feel real nauseated when I eat other things. So she said, I want you to go get a cheeseburger on your way home, and I want you to eat the whole thing. And I was so mad at her. Was I mad? And so I got in the drive-thru.
But you're a good student. You do your homework.
I'm a good student. I do my homework. My parents taught me that. I had to, or they'd kill me. So I did my homework, and I'm a little bit of a recovering people pleaser. And
Recovering.
Okay. Yeah, I don't try to do that as much as I used to, but at the time I was, I don't want to disappoint her. So I've learned it's much worse to disappoint yourself than it is to disappoint other people. But at the time, I think so I went to the drive-thru, and I pulled up, and I ordered my cheeseburger, and I took a bite, and I was like, oh no. And I didn't think I could eat it. And so I took another bite, and I chewed it, and it was like an event.
Yeah.
It was an event. So I ate the cheeseburger, and I went back and I trotted into her office and asked for my A, like the good little student that I am.
We're done now, right?
We're done.
I ate
I'm
the
healed.
cheeseburger.
Yeah, I'm healed. Fine.
Yeah.
Our work here is done. And she laughed, and she said, good job. And she'd keep giving me homework, and that's how our relationship went.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad.
And so it's good to highlight that experience, because teachers need to pull the proverbial face mask over themselves sometimes before they put it on their students or other people, like you were talking about people pleasing. And they need to know that they can seek help. Yeah. They can't admit they're having difficulty, because why wouldn't you have difficulty trying to care for 200 young people every year for decades, right?
Right. It's really, if you think about it, it's truly amazing what teachers do. And I'm not over here to toot my own horn or any, what I mean is the emotional load that is being carried by these educators is so much more than what I think anybody even thinks about. And here it is, it's November, so it's getting ready to be really busy because it's going to be Christmas and it's going to be New Year's and the holidays are coming, and the year is weird because everyone's wearing masks
Right.
or not at school at all or quarantined for 10 days or, it's very fluid and it's very, very hard right now. I'm as tired as I've ever been, right now as a teacher. But if you really kind of take a step back from it and you look at like what these people are doing, and especially like little people, like your son's 6, my son's 5, and he has such big feelings, but he doesn't know how to say them.
Yeah.
That these teachers have to kind of be in tune to all of that. And then many of them are moms or dads, to go home and be in tune with the needs of their families, or to be in tune with the needs of their spouses, or all of that. That load is tremendously heavy. And I think maybe we take for granted as a society that teachers should just come into school and teach reading, writing, and arithmetic and move on. And I wish it was that easy.
Yeah.
I do. But man, it is not. It is not.
It's not simply a job.
No.
I have a day job that's a job that I deal with adults for the most part on a daily basis, and you have to deal with young people, which it's not a job anymore at that point.
No.
But you chose to do this.
Yes, I did willingly, and
and so many teteachers do, thank God.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard. What do we do about that? Because, especially like this year,
mm-hmm.
as parents, we struggle with the changes that come with the pandemic, and now we have next week we have e-learning 2 days a week for a kindergartner, and how does that work? So how do we then also think about the kindergarten teacher who has to figure this out at the same time? That's really, really hard, right?
Yeah, she needs an extra pair of arms.
Yeah.
And a lot of hugs that you can't give her because it's not safe.
Right.
You're now, interestingly enough, I'm in a district where we're in person 5 days a week and have no plans to do any hybrid learning or any at-home learning. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what we've been told. And I'm real glad. I think the data show that school isn't really where people are catching COVID. So, okay, fine, let's stay where, the data are showing that it's real safe to be at school.
Yeah.
So I'm really thankful for a district that wants to be in. I'm also really, really tired. I'm not going to be, dishonest about that.
Yeah.
So you can be thankful and tired at the same time. And you can be a good teacher and sad at the same time. And you can be there for your students and there for yourself at the same time. But you have to be conscious that both of those needs are present. And is there a societal fix for that? I don't know, but I'm sure it costs money,
Right.
Because everything does. And where does that money come from? I don't know if there's like a magic pot somewhere that we can dig it out of the ground. And I don't know. But what I think is very important is that we check in with people, and that we make sure each other is okay. And if it's okay, I'd like to tell you about something cool that's happening in my classroom right now.
Floor is yours.
Thank you. I have been waiting 15 years for the thing that's happening right now to happen, which is really interesting. And my husband is a school superintendent, so school is sort of the family business.
Yeah.
But he believes very strongly in like relationship building and being there for each other and showing up for each other. And I preach that to my kids all the time. And I think the sort of central message of the book is not, oh my gosh, this awful thing happened to me.
Right.
It isn't that.
No.
The message of the book is how can we show up for each other? Mm-hmm. And how can we let ourselves be seen in the way that we should allow ourselves to be seen, so that like the magic can happen. And the magic is happening right now in my 5th period class. And I hope I hope they will tune in. But they will be so proud to know that they are the magic. But, and I don't think I've told them that, but I will. But I have 33 students in my 5th period class.
Wow.
There are 33 of them, and there's one of me, and there are masks, and there are wipes, and there are cleaners, and there is social distancing. And right now, 17 of them are quarantined.
Wow.
Yeah. So, yeah. It's unreal. We had a case of COVID pop up, and it wiped out half my room, and it's really tough. But
are half of them? Are you teaching them online, basically?
No,
Zoom or whatever?
Yeah, we have Schoology. So Schoology is like an online management program. So they get in and they get the materials, and then they just bring them back to me when they are safe to return.
Wow. Okay.
And breathe the same air. So. But what's interesting about my 5th period is that there are 33 of them. And on the first day of school, I watched them pour in, and they kept coming, and they kept coming. There's just all these kids. And I had 30 desks, and I had 33 kids. And
Crap.
Mm-hmm. I had 3 kids like standing, like leaning against the walls. And I was like, don't touch that. It was a whole... It was a whole mess.
Develop a bubble around yourself.
Yes, I have like an area that they can't come in my desk, and so I don't know that they know anything but this, like from here up of me.
Oh yeah.
This year they've never seen my feet.
Wearing Bermuda shorts every day. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Leggings, slippers. So I wish they came in and I don't know what happened. I couldn't tell you, but we were sitting there one day, and this girl. She raised her hand and she said, "Can I ask you a question?" And I said, "Sure." You know, I'm always telling them funny things because I have a 5-year-old who's feral, and he's, you know him, he's a wild man.
We've met, yep.
Yeah, and so my 5-year-old is never short on funny things that he does or says or is involved in or wants or whatever. He wanted to be a roly-poly bug for Halloween, so that was its own hilarity. So I'm always sharing them. They call him the orange kid because they know about his orange obsession.
Loves orange, yeah.
Loves the color orange. So I tell them stories and stuff. And so this girl, Kaylee, raises her hand and she says, I probably shouldn't say her name, but it's Kaylee. She raises her hand and she says, "I got a question." I was like, "What?" She goes, "How come you are so open with us?" And I said, "I'm not going to answer that question until I decide whether that's bad or good." She said,
"I reserve the right."
Right. And she said, "Mrs. Acton, it's the best thing ever, but tell me why." And I said, "Okay." So we kind of pulled back from our course material and, you know, our stuff. And I said, "I want you to know that I'm a safe place, that I'm a spot where you can be yourself and you can let me see you, because if I let you see me, then you'll let me see you. And then if something happens, you won't ever have to apologize for who you are or how you react or what happens in whatever happens." And it was this really fortuitous conversation because 30 minutes later, literally 30 minutes later, same girl finds out through social media that a family member has passed away.
Oh, wow.
And it's happening like she'd finished her work and she opened her phone to check social media, and this is how she found out. That's why I hate social media. But It was this awful thing. It was like the big awful, and it was happening right there in front of all of us. And so she asked to excuse herself, and she did, and she left like her notebook on her desk. And a couple of the girls in my class got up, and they walked over to her notebook, and they started writing her notes. "If you need me, this is my number. Please text me. This is my number. I'm here for you.
Wow.
This is my number." And I'm watching these 33 people do exactly what I want them to do, right? Show up for each other. And it's this small microcosm of how I think it should happen, but it happened. And I got to see it, and I'm watching them, and I got Kate, I got the girl, I got her back, and she came in, and her mom was gonna come get her, and, you know, natural things. But I had a girl come out in the hall while I was talking to her, and she handed her a piece of paper and had a Bible verse on it. And it said, it had a Bible verse and her phone number, and she said, "I lost my mom 2 years ago, and I just want you to know I understand and I'm with you.
Wow.
And she gave it to her. And I'm like, it's happening.
Yeah.
What I'm telling everyone is the most important thing is the most important thing. And they do this for each other all the time. And they did it for me too. My husband was recently diagnosed with a life-threatening illness, and I did not cope well. We went down the chocolate cake path. Not gonna lie.
Yeah.
But it was, I mean, we are going through a big, scary, awful thing. And the Friday before fall break, my kids brought me a huge chocolate cake.
Oh.
They made me this giant chocolate cake, and they gave me a gift card from McDonald's to buy Diet Cokes, and they got some stuff for my kids, and they had a big comfy blanket that they threw in this basket, and they just gave it to me. And I said, Juniors, 17-year-old kids, 16-year-old kids, they're children. And I said, you guys, and they were like, listen, you're there for us all the time. This is how we can be there for you. And I was like, oh my gosh. This is what I'm saying. Like, what I am saying is allow people to see you.
Yeah.
You know, because of what happened with Kevin, I have what they call trauma-induced anxiety. I have a little bit of PTSD. That was a recent diagnosis, and it's so annoying to say that. But I do have that. And I would bet you that my best friend has it too. Because of what we had happen to us, or didn't have happen to us, or both.
Yeah.
You know, but what I have said to people from that sort of moment forward, from Trish on, was if you show up for people, they'll show up for you. And if you let people see you, they will let you see them. And when you have that first, then you can teach them some real awesome stuff.
There you go.
You can teach them real awesome stuff. And man, they're good writers, and they're good readers, and they're good participators, but they're really good human beings. And then that's success to me.
Yeah.
Right? That's what I've been saying all this time. And they're doing it. They're living it. It's happening in my classroom every day. Right now, only half of them are doing it because the rest of them are germy, but they're doing it. And it's further, what's the word, validation, or, you know, confirmation that this is what people need.
Yeah.
I can teach them all I want about books and literature and writing and all that. And they do listen, and they do what I ask them to do, and they do great things. But the great things that they're doing for each other are so much more important.
Yeah.
We have a mental health check-in every Friday. We just check on everybody. How are you? How are you? How are you? We go around the room. Everybody talks.
That's great.
And they love it. They're like, is today our mental health check-in, Mrs. Acton? They love it. And we do it. And
have you ever discussed therapy with them?
Yeah. I tell them about my therapist all the time. What they asked me was who my book was dedicated to. And my book is dedicated to Trish, because she literally saved my life. And they asked me about her, and they were like, whoa, do you still see her? And that was a hard conversation.
Yeah.
That was a tough conversation. But yeah, it's just so neat to know that, like, that I'm not wrong. You know, I know what they want more from me than what they need more from me, probably, than let's talk about the symbolism in this book. We can talk about symbolism all day long, but if we don't talk about human beings, it does not matter. It does not matter at all.
I was going to ask you, that was going to be one of my questions, was because you talk about so much heartache in the book, and you end the book by writing a letter to yourself at the age of 23. If you were able to talk to yourself, that's what you would say in that letter. Again, go buy the book, right? You gotta check it out.
I think you'll like it.
Yeah, I think you will. Yeah, it's a great book, and
all 12 of you.
Yeah. Well, we'll see.
Maybe there's 15 today.
Maybe you'll go viral. It's a pretty good conversation. And so you had so much heartache and so many kids that you've lost, unfortunately, which is awful. But talk about, if you can think of a few kids not by name necessarily, that
Sure.
you've taught and maybe had a small impact on their life, but have gone on to do really great, awesome things. Can you think of a few that are, I don't know, astronauts or I don't know, but something crazy like that, but professors somewhere or I don't know.
I have a kid that's at MIT right now.
Oh, there you go.
He asked me to write him a letter of recommendation when he got accepted or when he was trying to be accepted. And I said, I don't even know if I'm smart enough to go to that website, buddy. So I went to the website and it was real intimidating. I was like typing in MIT. I'm like, what the heck am I doing? Math is not my strong suit, obviously. And yeah, so I have a kid at MIT right now. And I know this isn't like this big grandiose thing, but I have a former student who's a teacher who was with me when we lost a kid. He was with me when we lost his best friend and died by suicide. And he was 14. They were freshmen. And no way on earth are 14-year-old kids equipped for something like that.
No.
And it was grueling, completely grueling. But he's a teacher now. He's teaching social studies down south of Indianapolis, and he's coaching football. And he'll tell you that it's because what we did that day or those weeks that followed the loss of his friend.
Wow.
Or part of it is because of that. And he and his classmates, they were 14 years old. I mean, they're babies. Your oldest is 14, and they're babies.
Absolutely, yeah.
They are not. They think they're not babies, and they think they know all the things, but they don't. And
especially boys, men. Like we always joke, it's we're not useful until 30 years old
at least.
So, yeah.
I mean, useful, but maybe not like tremendously.
Right.
So
right.
He's teaching and he's doing great stuff. And I'm watching him, and I can just listening to him talk. I know that he heard us. I know he heard some of the things that we said and how we said them, and I know he's carrying some of that forward, and I'm so proud of him. I'm so proud of him. I had lunch with him this summer, and I hadn't seen him in 9 years or 8 years. I don't know. It'd been a long, long, long time.
Wow, yeah.
And he's all grown up. He bought like a house. He's like adulting. He bought like a house, and he has a girlfriend, and he's got like a career, and he's doing it. He's doing it, and he's teaching his students that you do it, and you do it anyway, and you do it when it's hard, and that's what I want them to do. Mm-hmm. And I'm so proud. I'm so proud of him.
You mentioned that, I think, in your letter, right? Do it anyway. Do it when it's hard. Yeah. When those shows that have like you'll follow some family or something, and then they'll at the end of the show they'll do the kind of the fast forward and show the kids grown up or stuff like that. I'm a sucker. I weep at those things. Like, I don't know how you do it. When you see a student you taught at 17 years old and you get to witness them at 29 or 30, like that's got to be mind-blowing.
It's amazing. They come see me sometimes, and they always ask, like, are you open to a visit? And I'm like, yes, please. Tell me all of the things about your life. Yeah. Tell me everything. And one came and saw me. It was pre-COVID because I can't have visitors now. But he came and saw me and said, I really love the Civil War. And I said, really? And he said, yeah, I like do reenactments, and like I knew he did those things.
Yeah.
And he said, but I think instead of like welding, I think I want to tell people about the Civil War. And I said, okay. And he goes, I think I want to be a teacher, but like how many papers do I have to write? there was a limit that he was willing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think he said, you always talk about how you don't have very many marketable skills. And I said, no, I don't. I mean, I can read books and write papers, and that's it. And he laughed. He said, but I think you're wrong. And I said, why? He goes, because you communicate pretty effectively. And he said, and you write pretty well. And I was like, right, I think that falls under the write papers umbrella. And he giggled, and he goes, but I'm terrible at writing papers. I said, right. He goes, so do you have to write papers when you're a teacher? I said, no, you just have to write papers to get to be one. And so we kind of had a good conversation about that, but it was interesting to listen to him. What's the word? Like the cognitive process, you know, that he was going through to get to, I really love this, so why wouldn't I talk about it? Yeah. You know, I really love books, so I talk about them as a profession. But more than books, I love teenagers. I love people. Well, I don't love people, but I love teenage people. And I love their passion, and I love their heart, and I love their I wish I was more like them. I wish I had a little less fear and a little more pizzazz. And so they do way more for me than I do for them. But that's kind of what we do. You know, when they come back, we talk about like how you came to this decision, or how you know, getting someone to MIT is incredible. You know, he got in and he's there. Well, he's not, I don't think he's there because the East Coast is what it is right now. Yeah. They're having a lot of trouble traveling and stuff like that, but he's virtually accepted to MIT, and he's a student there. What else do I have? What other kids do I have doing cool things? I think I have one that's like several that are doctors. Okay, good job.
There you go.
You're way smarter than I am. Way to go. I have one that is at IU right now. She's a freshman at IU, but she's probably the smartest kid I've ever taught. She taught me way more than I ever taught her. Smartest kid I ever taught. She's gonna practice law someday. She's in the School of Public and Environmental Affairs, and she wants to do all kinds of things with public affairs and law, and she will change the world. She will change the world. She's an incredible human, and her mom is awesome, but incredible human. Her name's Logan. So if she listens, she is one of those kids that like would ask just the right question to make me have to say, I'm not sure. Let me think about that.
Yeah.
And that's always good. That's always a good thing.
Well, that's great.
It's humbling.
Yeah, well, in a way, you know, you keep saying they're teaching you more than you teach them.
Oh, by far.
I don't know. Maybe they'd have a different opinion.
Maybe.
But even the fact that the kids are in your classroom and you're focusing on teacher trauma in your book, you know, especially for the ones that become teachers, maybe you're helping them have coping skills beyond what their teacher school is going to give them, or did give them.
I hope so. I hope so. It's really hard to like, when they tell me they want to be a teacher. Yeah. I'm glad for them, but I also want to say, like, just understand that there's so many things, you know, and I'm sure that in any job there are so many things, you know, I'm sure in your job there are so many things. But I don't know if it's always like the unique personalities and mental health and emotions that we cope with. And teenage emotions are, you know, a beast of their own. But I want them to know that, you know, like, my room's always a safe place, and we can shut the door and you can swear if you need to, and if you need to throw things, as long as you don't break anything, we can do whatever you need to do. And then we have to call your mom, you know, then we have to call her and say, hey, so-and-so is having a really hard time. Or we have to call your counselor, and then your counselor can call your mom. But if they know that my room is a safe place, and if they know that.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Do you give them advice? And if you do, what do you say?
Oh, gosh. I think that depends on the topic. You know, our producer has a question.
The question was, do you give them advice? Mm-hmm. And if you do, what do you say?
I try to stay away from advice, because if they take your advice and it's bad, then it's your fault.
Yeah.
But, you know, if someone comes in and they're asking me about relationships, or they're asking me about people being mean, and, you know, I was a teenage girl, so I can say this. Teenage girls can be very mean, and teenage boys can be very goofy. Yeah. And just like Labrador puppies, you know, like with limbs and ears and things everywhere. But like,
oh man,
I think the thing I've learned as a recovering people pleaser is that, you know, when someone is mean to you, what I will say to them, when someone is mean to you, that's more a reflection of them than it is of you. And if you can separate yourself a little bit, it hurts you, but people who are hurting hurt others, and I had to learn that in a really tough way. As an adult, I've had to learn that over and over again. And we talk a little bit about that, I think, in the book too, because I really did struggle with adults at the beginning of my career, because I was 23 and they didn't think I was an adult, and I didn't really think I was an adult. I was just playing one. I'm not an adult, just play one on TV.
Yeah.
But no, I try to stay away from like too concrete of advice, I think, because it's really not my place, and if that advice doesn't match the values of the family that kid is raised in, or
slippery slope.
It's a very slippery. But what I talk to them about is you cannot control other people, right? You can control yourself and your values and your actions and your responses. And so if you learn to respond to things rather than reacting to things, which, those are two very different things, and they always have me explain, what do I mean by that? If you can control your responses and you can control who you spend time with, and you can control who has access to you, and you can control how that access works. Boundaries are beautiful. That advice solves a lot of teenage problems, without giving a lot of advice.
Specific advice.
Yeah. Because lots of teenage problems are he said, she said, so-and-so blasted me on social media for this or that thing. And I really wish social media, I'm really glad we didn't have it when we were in school. I don't know how you feel about that, but I do.
Oh, I agree. And, I don't know have you seen The Social Dilemma?
I haven't
Netflix?
yet, but it's on my list. I want to watch it. What do you think? Do you like it?
I like it, and it's also scary as hell because it exposes not necessarily what is happening with social media on purpose with, people making decisions, but it explains kind of how these algorithms have become the thing that was meant to bring us together. Social media is the thing that's going to pull us apart because it's keeping everybody. The algorithms are basically built to keep you engaged with the platform, whatever it is, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And if the best way to keep people engaged is to have things that are interesting, and mundane things are not interesting, So if so-and-so is blasting somebody else on social media, then that's going to interest lots of other people because it's, divisive and it's hateful and all those things. And that's going to keep all those other students engaged in the platform instead of like the example you gave in your 5th period where they are dealing with each other, in a physical basis and, at a human level, and they're taking care of each other that way, and they're dealing with each other that way. And they saw a person have a real human experience, the loss of a loved one.
I will never forget it. I think I waited my whole career for that moment.
Wow.
I really do. And
so nothing like it until that point?
No, and I am so sad because in December, the mix of kids I have is going to change. Yeah. And so that 33 is not going to ever be that 33 again.
Oh, wow.
And I will miss them. Yeah. And I'll still have them, at different points of the day, but I won't have them. And 5th period's like the longest period of the day, and I'm so glad. It's the best hour of my whole day. And all my other kids will probably be like offended. I don't mean it that way. I just mean this experience is everything I've preached and everything I've worked for, and it's happening in front of my eyes. And my husband would tell you, he's big on the fish philosophy, where you just like, it kind of has these principles of like playing, making people's day, choosing your attitude, stuff like that. He's like, they're being fishy to each other. And they are, they're taking care of each other. And they ask me how I'm doing. And I usually just, I'm fine, I'm good, and then they'll say, but are you really? Tell us how you're really doing. They know a little bit about the this threatening illness that we're dealing with, and they know a little bit. I'm obviously not going to be like, so here's the situation and lay it out for a bunch of 17-year-olds. I definitely don't do that, but they know that we're dealing with some tough things at our house, and so they also know that I really like my husband, so that it scares me, and so they ask, and they're being fishy, and they are being kind, just really good people, to each other, and that's what I really hope for all of them, and I'm seeing on a small scale just unfolding right. I mean, I waited my whole career for that moment. I really did. And it was beautiful. And I can't even, I just want to hug them all. I wish I could hug them all. I wish COVID wasn't a thing, but it is. So I don't know. Yeah, they're just incredible.
From the social dilemma standpoint, I would, if I were you, I'd tell them at the end, when your last day with them, something like, this is what human interaction really looks like. Mm-hmm. It doesn't exist on social media platforms. And so just try to remember that, guys. So, if you can get them to delete social media, do that too.
I told them, I recently broke up with my Apple Watch. And I'm so glad that I did. Notifications were too overwhelming, and I turned some things off, and I've focused on being really, really present with my people. Mm-hmm. And it's been so nice, and I think my husband would tell you it's been a really good change. We have an interesting age difference, and so generationally there are some things that we deal with, and social media is one of them, and technology is one of them, and so but for us to talk about, for me to say the most important thing you can do is show up for someone, and not do that is not okay.
Right.
And so breaking up with the Apple Watch was really easy. Like, it's sitting in my closet and I haven't charged it in weeks, and I could care less.
Good.
I may charge it when I work out, maybe.
Yeah.
But I might not. I don't know.
Yeah. There you go. That's the message right there, because you want to take care of humans and take care of people, show up for everyone, check in on people.
Yeah.
And none of that happens on online platforms.
No.
That doesn't mean go comment on something or press the like button or friend somebody. Yeah, it means speak to people.
It means look in their eyes and ask them how they are.
Yeah.
And let them be honest with you, and have the courage to be honest with them. And I think vulnerability is so hard for people, and I think honesty is hard for people. I was really anxious last weekend, because that's how I live my life. But
anxiety and chocolate.
Yeah,
cake.
I'm a professional basket case, and so but I was really struggling last weekend. And my husband looked at me and he said, "How are you?" And I said, "I'm okay." And he said, "I invented I'm okay. So tell me how you really are." And so I think we're trying to model that for our kids, and I think we're trying to model that in our home and in our interactions with other people. And this is the best conversation I've had all weekend, right? Like, I'm looking you in the eyes, and we're talking about real things. Mm-hmm. But I think it's really hard for people to take the wall down and not just say, "It's okay, I'm okay, I'm fine. I'm okay, but man, I'm anxious sometimes, and I'm okay, but I'm really sad about some things." You can be simultaneously okay and struggling.
Yeah.
And it's okay to say that you're struggling, because it takes a lot more strength to be vulnerable with someone than it takes to tell them that you're okay and straighten your back and lock your jaw and go. It takes a lot more strength to do that. And so the strength that I saw those 17-year-olds exhibit with each other made me, just was beautiful.
Yeah.
Because, and teenagers, their raw passion is something that I wish I had more of. I wish I could tell them to pump the brakes sometimes.
Yeah.
Right. But they were vulnerable with each other that day, and that was strength, not weakness. And it's real hard, I think, for some people to remember that. My girl Brene Brown taught me that, and she would have eaten that moment up, I think, in my 5th period class. I'd love to write her a letter and tell her about it sometime, and I might, but yeah, that's what strength really is. And that's what I want them to learn from me more than I want them to learn anything else. So.
Well, I think we're well over an hour.
Are we?
Yeah.
Okay.
Went quick, didn't it?
We did it. Yeah.
And we're live. Do we have any questions by any chance? No? Okay.
Everybody okay? Did we have
Well.
people watch? Cool. That's even better.
So, what do you got going on? This is the first appearance on a
Yeah,
podcast of many. Do you want to talk about any future appearances?
Sure, yeah. So we have, in a little while, we're going to kind of Facebook Live it up for a little bit of a launch.
Yep.
My publisher is
Book
going to,
release.
we're going to release the book in a safe, COVID-friendly way. My editor is going to pop on and talk a little bit about the book. Hopefully we will learn how to use the technology enough to make that happen.
And that will be on Facebook Live.
Facebook Live at 2:00.
What page can people find that at?
I think we'll probably go live on the Throwing Rocks page.
Okay.
I think that's probably best.
Okay.
And then let's see, what else are we doing? This coming weekend, I'm on a podcast, so it's like a 30-minute appearance. That's not going to air until like later in the spring.
Sure.
And then we have another one that is not going to air till later in the spring as well. So like information on those will be forthcoming. I don't know that I'm allowed to say a lot about those right now.
That's fine.
In January, I'm going to be presenting some professional development for teachers through the CIESC, which is the consortium of schools in Central Indiana who, schools kind of contribute to the consortium, and they receive professional development for their contributions to that.
Wow.
So the professional learning coordinator, director person reached out to me and said, hey, we need to talk about this.
Yeah.
So I'm going to present to them for about an hour in January. And then February, I'm going to present with the Indiana Department of Education School Safety Division and talk about our story and kind of what we do with school safety, but what we do with kids so that they never even want to think about picking up a gun. What has to happen in schools so that thought never crosses their minds. We have some radio appearances. I'm going to be on WIBC during the holidays with Rob Kendall. He does I don't remember the name of his show.
I don't know, yeah.
Yeah, but it's the talk. He has a daily talk radio show on
Awesome.
WIBC. And then there's a Brownsburg radio station I will be on, I think in the month of December. And then my publisher's finalizing some television things. So if you really want to see me sweat, tune into those, if that's something you're interested in. So those are things that are happening.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So we're making the rounds here.
Yeah.
We were going to be in Greenfield today, but COVID.
But COVID.
Yeah. We were going to be in Brownsburg yesterday, but COVID. So we kind of took those events and found a way to make them sort of happen. But yeah, if you want to direct them to the website, we can do that. Throwing Rocks on Facebook. And then my website is lindseyactonstories.com. You can purchase the book there. You can reach out to me directly. I like it. I hope you will too.
Yeah. Amazon.
It's on Amazon.
Barnes and Noble. I mentioned it's on a Finnish website for those of you watching in Finland. Yep.
I had no idea, but
Me
I'm
either.
really glad about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah. Check her out. Throwing Rocks on Facebook and LindseyActonStories.com.
Yeah.
And we'll be hearing from you elsewhere too. It sounds like. So.
Sounds like it.
All right.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Thanks so much for joining.
Yeah.
Okay, Lindsey. That's it. Bye,
See ya.
everyone.
Bye.